Hey, real estate rock stars, welcome to the whole enchilada of real estate investing, the only podcast that serves up the full feast of street smart strategies to build wealth and take control of your financial future. I'm Lou Brown, and I've been in the real estate game since 1976, so I've learned how to make the whole plate worth it. Each week, I'll be dishing out creative financing hacks and proven systems that help investors build multi-million-dollar businesses. No fluff, just the good stuff, straight from the source. Ready to dig in and start making deals? Let's get to it. Well, welcome everyone to another edition of the whole enchilada of real estate investing. And we have with us today Mr. Glen Sutherland from Canada. From Canada. I was joking with him earlier about how people pronounce it here in the States. And I love it. I love it. I love it. And I love the fact that we've got someone from another country on here to tell us about how to do investing, not only there, but here too. And there's a lot of people, a lot of Canadians in our world that do love what we do and how we do it here in the States. And they're able to maximize their returns because of these investments here in the States. So Glen, welcome. Tell us a bit more about yourself, and then we'll jump into some Q&A here.
Sure, of course. And before anyone, because I know your listeners are like most likely Americans or people who are investing out of state, don't tune out. I'm going to make sure that there is content for like investing in other states for, you can do this. If I can do this from another country, it's easier to do it from state to state. You can, if you're scared of going from wherever you live, Maryland to California or California to Ohio, well, you can do this. And anyway, I'm going to make sure we get given lots of stuff to go ahead. So maybe who I am, I'm Glen Sutherland. I am Canadian. I run the Canadian Investing in the U.S. podcast. Been running it for 8 years, teaching people how to invest in the U.S. from Canada. I love teaching. I love sharing. And honestly, I think that's the best way to grow. If you just put it all out there, people will respect the honesty. If you're always holding your cards, they're going to see through that. And they're not going to want to work with you because you're always going to be hiding something. So anyway, my method is that I invest all over the U.S., right? And with a lot of this, if I build a system in a certain market, I can replicate it into another market. And then you just have to adjust it as you change your strategies, right? So just if people are wondering, what do you mean? What markets? Florida, Ohio, Michigan, Missouri, Indiana, Alabama, and a little bit of Texas. So we invest all over the place. We set stuff up. Some years we do 40 houses in a year. Some years I'm in the multifamily and we go syndicate like a 150 unit building. I do a little bit of everything. We buy 4plexes, we buy 20 plexes. I buy what makes sense. And if I can do it from Canada, and until recently, I only got my E2 visa, my social security number, only about 2 years ago. And I was doing it without that. And you can still totally do that even without all that stuff. You don't need it.
I love that. You don't need it. You can be a Canadian. You can invest in the United States. You don't have to be here. And that's been proven over and over again with a lot of our licensees. They see what we're doing. They see how we're doing it. And they say, yeah, I can do that too. Yeah. And the cool thing is you just confirmed you don't even need a social security number. You don't even need a visa to the United States, right? You can just come here. And that's one of the great things about freedom, isn't it? That the country is wide open for business, loves it when people are bringing in money from other countries to invest in this country too, and help support this economy here. Well, we love Canadians and we love what you guys do there as well. So tell us about what had you cross the border. So you said you were already investing in real estate earlier. When you got started, you were purchasing properties as a landlord, using those as rentals. And then you said, you know what, I could turn this into a business. When was that?
Yeah. So I guess part of it, you always start off with hey, I just need this many rentals that average this much kind of income every month. And, if I get to a certain spot, I can leave my job. I'm like, everyone's looking for the financial freedom, a step out. And where I was having trouble is the tenancy law is not good. I live in Ontario, Canada. So the tenancy law is not good. It's more similar to California. So it's not in the landlord's favor. So I was having problems with that. And the other problems I was having was with growth. Lending in Canada is a lot different than lending in the US. It's more, I was doing like typical bank loan properties. And basically, I got to a point around 5 properties that they said, you're done. If you want more loans, you want to buy more houses, you're going to have to go to secondary lending and figure out how to do this. And based on the prices and the rental amounts, if I went to secondary lending, it didn't cash flow. It didn't make sense, and I didn't have anywhere to go. And we're talking 2016. And podcasting was a lot different back in 2016. There, as far as I know, there was no Canadian real estate podcasts. There was really only like 4 big US ones that I believe still all exist, but I don't need to drop names, but the big guys, they had their podcast back then. And I got listening to it. And I went, you know what? There's something here. I don't know how to do all of this, but I'm going to go as far as I can go. And then whenever I get there, I'm going to see what's going to go. Because if you wait until you know everything, you've passed, your money's sat there, you haven't done anything with it, you've missed opportunities. You never even take action because there's always going to be some sort of hurdle. And sometimes you just have to like, I'm going to go as far as I can go. So whenever I bought my first property, which was in Alabama, I didn't know how to do lending. I didn't know how to do a lot of stuff, but I bought the property. I, got property management in. I got the whole thing going, and it was like, okay, I figured out how to get a single rental. I used my home equity line of credit from my property, my home I lived in Canada, and I'm like, okay, now I'm stuck again, right? So met some people in Missouri. They showed me how to do the refinance, turn that one house into 3 houses. And then you're like, okay, well, we got something here. I'm stuck again. I'm like, this strategy doesn't work because it's not, how do I keep growing? I'm like, I'm just running out of money. And so I sold one of my properties in Ontario. And then I'm like, we're going to start doing this right. So then we started doing construction. And so we were doing renovations, and we started doing that in Huntsville, Alabama. And then we went into Indianapolis. Then we went into Dayton, Toledo, and it just kept growing. It just market after market, we just started replicating, and it started off slow. And as people saw what I was doing, they asked me to speak at events and speak to, because a lot of people they were interested in the US, but no one was really talking about it. So it was back in 2017. I started telling my story, and while I was talking about podcasts, I was a big fan of Joe Fairlist, and I worked with him on a project down in Texas. And then I was talking to him, and he said, start a podcast. He said, share your story, leave it all out on the line, tell everything, tell people how to do this, and it will. He's like, I'm like, well, shouldn't I charge for that? Shouldn't I be like all the work I've done, everything else? He goes, just do it for free, put it out there, and people will come to work with you in a different way. It'll authentically come. And he was not wrong. He wasn't wrong. And then on the found projects, people were like, how do I do this? And they're like, here, come partner with me. We can go do this. And it just started growing and growing. And that's kind of the story.
I love that, man. That is a beautiful story, and definitely one that shows you have a lot of courage as well, because you do have to, sometimes you sit on the sideline, I don't know if I should do this or not. And you just took the step. You went in the deep end of the pool instead of the shallow end of the pool. You went in the deep end and said, I'm just going to do this and see what happens. And maybe I can figure it out. And, the thing is about real estate, it's very forgiving. It's just hard to mess this up. Now, one of the things we do is we find the buyer before we buy. So we've already got a customer. We've already got them pre-vetted. We already know how much down payment they have, how much they can afford on a monthly basis. So our plan is to flip slow instead of flip fast. And we love it. And we are kind of like that concern about buying the wrong house in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time with the wrong things wrong with it. You can't really do that when you've already got a customer to do it with. So that's a saving grace for some of you that are sitting on the sidelines and concerned about taking that risk and maybe not having that thing called courage that causes you to jump in that deep end. So I love that, Glenn.
That strategy you're talking about, it makes a lot of sense, especially in this market. because the hard part, if you're just going to do a fast flip, right, is that if the markets are, I wouldn't say good or bad, I'd say less predictable than they've been in the past. And you're you don't want to do anything unpredictable, especially if you're borrowing anyone else's money to do this. You want this to be as predictable as you can make this. And that's the hard part when I see even some of my students or even myself, when you're doing flips that take too long, too many, because the big money is made in big flips, like full guts, full everything. But those take a lot of time. And when you're in an up market, that is good. On a flat market, that costs you money.
Yeah.
And so it's
And
having it predictable, knowing how the end, knew who's going to go in. That strategy is just going to make it's going to take the stress off. You're going to know how it's going to do it. Less variables. It's just going to be how much loan payments am I going to have to make if the construction goes a little long or something goes a little off. But it's not. It's going to bring. You're going to know your numbers all the way through. Which at the ends, a lot of times, if you're doing a regular flip, you don't know your numbers until someone makes an offer. Sometimes you even put it on the market and you don't know your numbers because they're gonna, someone's gonna offer below, and you're like, are we gonna take that or not? I don't know.
well, no, you're exactly right. And, that's one of the things about people's concern about doing the business, buying at the wrong time or, not having those things figured out, and like you were talking about, well, you could do construction, you could do renovation, but if you're just getting started in the business, that's not a really good place to get started. It's just business, is it?
Yeah. I still love to push people towards the construction. Like I'm not sure what your business is, but it's one of those, the variables. It's a big variable that, typically people are open to selling their property at a much bigger discount if there's stuff wrong with it. And they know that if they put it on the MLS, it's just going to sit because days on market is longer. And if you're going to have that even longer because of this, it just, anyway.
Yeah. That's one of the things. A renovation, I think, is what you're referring to.
Yeah,
When
sorry,
you say
renovation, yes.
construction, I'm thinking about brand new
Brand new,
houses,
yes,
brand
sorry.
new construction, vacant land. You're trying to build something on there. So definitely, the definitions are always important to get clear. So yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. I'm a big believer in buying properties that need some kind of fix up. Another twist that we do is we give our buyers the opportunity to do some or all of the repairs in exchange for a credit towards their down payment. So they're able to actually pick up not only whatever cash they have to work with, but now they can pick up a credit that can make up the difference and join our Path to Home Ownership program. So it works out fantastic, and they get to customize the house to their flavor. So that's another fun.
I don't know, really want to turn this whole thing around on you. What kind of strategy is that? Are you doing like a lease option or a contract for deed?
Yep. We're doing all of the above. Rent to own, owner finance, cash sale. It's our Path to Home Ownership program. So those are the people that we're attracting when we're looking for customers. We're looking for people that eventually want to own the home or a different home, and we help them build up their credit and build up their down payment. So it's a fun strategy, and we've helped a lot of people to end up with home ownership because of it. So I'm excited about, introducing that to you also, but definitely to bring the Canadian flavor in here, because the fact is that we call it long distance investing, but you can be anywhere in this country or another country, and you could choose to invest in this country and have so much fun. Now, you have not only been finding properties here, you've been buying them right, buying them cheap, and you've been using bank financing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do a bit of a mix. I honestly prefer cash, and using like a joint venture system is, like I said, anytime you can make things more predictable, that does make things more predictable. But I do use bank financing as well. We use like fix and flip loans. We do like long-term loans, do a lot of DSCR stuff and hard money stuff. Until you get the visa in the social security number, that's where you're kind of at. You're going to be playing in that playground until you get that stuff. You're not going to be able to touch conventional or any of those other loans.
Right. So some of you listening today, DSCR means
Debt
all of a
service
sudden
coverage
my
ratio.
debt service coverage ratio. And so you want to definitely look into those type of loans. Now, me personally, I love seller financing, and I've never been to the
Oh yeah,
bank.
I
I've
love
never
those too.
qualified for a loan on a single family or small multifamily. So that's a different angle on talking to
We do
sellers,
those as well.
solving their problem.
We do seller financing as well. It's not as not as common as I do those, but like I don't know. We don't know if we need to go into crazy stories, but I flew into different
Sure.
places and talked to things and negotiated portfolios all with seller financing, and it's just everybody has their different things they like to do, and I don't like to pick up the phone. I don't like to do the cold calling. So usually whenever I'm setting up seller financing, it's typically a warm lead. Like it's come from somebody in my team who knows somebody, and then or a realtor knows someone, or somebody knows somebody, and they're already warm to the idea. And then I go and figure out what they need, what I need, and what we can find in the middle to make it work.
Well, I love that, and I love the fact that you have invested in so many states. So, how do you typically find your deals?
It varies, and it also depends on the market. When I first started down in the US, like my first property was a turnkey because I just needed to get my feet wet. And then we moved on to bank stuff. So we did a lot of short sales. We started working on short sales, buying those from the bank and foreclosures. And we did a lot of bank stuff when I was getting warmed up. My the person I was connected to had a good connection to HUD, and so we were collecting those. Right now, I get a lot of my deals, honestly, a lot of it been coming from wholesalers, but as of recent, just because of like depending on the market, if you've seen that 2 years ago the days on market was 20 days, and now you see a market with 60 days or 90 days, the MLS can even be an opportunity because properties are just going to sit there. People need to sell. They need out, and you can find a middle ground that works for everybody, right? So it's changed a little bit now.
Yeah.
We're
This is
working on yesterday. I was working on negotiating a two property seller finance deal in Missouri. Sometimes that happens. What happened with that one is just a private lender that I know, and what they did was they took properties back. They're not in the business of taking properties back, and so you know what? They already have they all they want is to get their monthly payment. That's all they want. They don't want to own houses. And so they're the perfect people to work with too to find some middle ground. So we talk back and forth what they're into, where they are, what they got stuck with, what kind of stuff, what kind of renovations left, and get my team over there to walk it and figure stuff out. So we still do those, but you know what? I think about a lot of it is if you're flexible and you understand a lot of different strategies, then you don't have to pass on deals. You can be like, maybe I can, like, hey, this doesn't work as a typical burr because I'm not going to have the numbers. But maybe what's the mortgage on this? And you registered this at a good point, and you have like a 3.5% rate. Hey, maybe we can do a sub two on this. Like, there's other opportunities. Maybe there's a way to make this work. And even if it's not for me, maybe someone else I know it'll work for, and then you solve someone else's problem. And if you become the deal finder or the deal negotiator in the middle, that person, they get the deal from you, they're going to come back to get another deal. I don't typically wholesale. I think I've wholesaled, I think 7 deals in my entire life. But, sometimes there's, an assignment fee or something to just connect people. And sometimes you just do it for free because you're like, hey, I realize there's not money in this deal, but I know that the relationship will grow from this.
So you like the buy hold strategy,
I
and
love it.
that's me as well. I love the income stream from it. That's they call me Mr. Cash Flow, the king of cash flow, because I believe that the buy hold sell strategy is the right one, and you're able to maximize your return on that investment because you've got a customer in there that's eventually going to buy it. You don't have the typical cost to sell, and you still got income potentially for another 40 years. So we love that concept, and you do too, about, hey, you've got a customer, why not? You got an asset, why not keep the asset and get the benefit of inflation on that asset over a long period of time?
Depending on your jurisdiction too, there can also be like tax advantages for holding it for a period of time. Just the way that write-offs can happen, what you can write off, what's considered active, what considered passive income. And sometimes there's an advantage to having it for a period of time instead of in and out. So you could put it into the passive basket instead of the active basket, which could have a lower, depending on how you're structured, what kind of LLCs, LPs, C corps, and how it's all rolls and what you're able to do legally. There can be advantages to holding it instead of in and out.
So I love this. Now you're in Canada and you're investing in the United States. So is there a double tax for you? Do you have to pay United States taxes and Canadian taxes? And how do you navigate this international thing?
So there is a tax treaty between both countries. So like when you buy a property in the US, you pay the IRS first, and then if there is just something, sometimes there's additional to pay to the CRA if depending on how you're structured, how it's set up. People who do set this up wrong often don't have a problem with double tax until the very end. And they I'm trying to say this correctly, but they get cocky and they do one and they don't get double tax on their first year. They have a long-term rental. They do another one. They start collecting these. And they haven't structured these properly. And it doesn't come until the title company sells that for you or the attorney. And then all of a sudden you're slapped with FERPTA, you're slapped with double tax, you're slapped with all this stuff if it's not set up right. And there is lots of like ways to set this up right. And there is lots of ways to set this up wrong. And the real trick is to find an attorney or, whoever to set this up who understands how the CRA is going to look at this, which is Canada Revenue Agency. Like you have to set this up the correct way. Because if you just call up and say, hey, I want to buy this one property in, I don't know, wherever, and I'm just going to buy it and put it in an LLC because that's what the U.S. attorney looks at. What happens is that looks fine until you sell it. And when you sell it, Canada Revenue doesn't, in Canada, there's no such thing as an LLC. They have like LPs, they have like the equivalent of C Corps, which is an Inc. in Canada or an incorporation. There's lots of similar strategies that they tax the same way, but there's no similar to LLC. So the way that the IRS will tax an LLC is to flow through entity and it goes to your personal return. So you pay your taxes personally, but Canada Revenue goes, hey, that's a corporation. We want to tax that corporately. And guess what? You just paid Canada corporately and you paid the US personally, and it all got messed up, right? But if you set this up the right way, you made personal, corporate, whichever, you mapped up your strategies. And like, if anyone's like, hey, did I do this right? Honestly, just call me. I do free calls. If you, I'll just tell you you're messed up or you're not, or talk to this person. And the thing is, even if you screw this up, my first property that I bought down in Alabama, I did it all wrong. But didn't cost me any money. When you file your taxes, you can change how corporations are taxed. And you just have to check certain boxes and you can fix all this stuff. It's all fixable, but you just have to know to fix it before you sell the property. Otherwise, you got yourself in trouble.
Oh, that's great advice, man. And the takeaway, guys, is the matching strategies, right? If you buy it that way in the US, you need to own it that way in Canada as well, and report it that way in Canada as well. That's great. That's great advice and helpful. So you're able to do business in the States, you're able to borrow money in the States, you're able to do seller financing in the States, and you're working with a number of different strategies to actually find these properties. It sounds like you're working with investors that are lenders, private money lenders. They're having to take properties back and they don't want to own those properties. So that's a great strategy. We just need to find people that are lenders and private money lenders, right? And then they often don't want to own those properties. So that's
the same thing with a bank. Banks don't want to own properties. Private money lenders, anyone who's a money lender, they don't want to own properties. They want the cash flow.
It's just too easy for them, isn't it? When you can make money out of thin air and charge interest on it, it's just too easy.
The hard part is if you just want to go into that business, you got to have money to do it. It's one of those things you got to do the hard work in order to get into that passive sort of spot if you want to do that.
Well, you touched base on something I love is becoming the bank for our customers, right? So when people don't have good enough credit or good enough down payment, or the bank just doesn't love them and they don't fit inside the banker's box, then we become the bank for our customers. And then we're able to get income for 40 years. from those folks. And so we love that long-term strategy of being able to help people that otherwise would not have an opportunity. They'd be X'd out. They'd have to be renters for the rest of their life. So those are the kind of customers that we look for, that not only are wanting to play the game of home ownership, but also willing to do some or all of the repairs to the home. Then we're able to keep them as a long-term strategy. So that's another thought that I can put in your thought pattern about possibilities with working with your folks. So now we've got the opportunity now, and you're investing in so many different states. So what are your thoughts, or what can you share with folks about the long distance approach? You're sitting in Ottawa, and here you're buying properties all over. How is it that you're able to navigate this long distance approach?
I think it's not, there's a lot of mistakes you make off the start, and then you realize that there's a right way to do this. And when you think about this, depending on how you want to do this, if you want it, even this will work for Americans too. If you just want to invest in a different state, you want to be working with somebody else. There is lots of great people out there to help you, and there is lots of bad people out there who are looking to make some money, right? So if you are going to work with a hard money lender, a DSCR lender, think about how they run their business. They're going to protect themselves, right? So if you say going to do a fix and flip loan with a DSCR lender, what they're going to do whenever you do go to a construction loan is they're going to do an inspection before they make payment. They're not going to pay for work that isn't completed. They're going to do this right. Everything they do, they're going to be conservative on the numbers when they buy it. They're going to have underwriting issues, the 0.7, the 1.2. They're going to have all their underwriting that they need to hit. And if you start learn how how they're doing their underwriting, and you do your underwriting the same way, first of all, you're just not going to get into a bad project. Whenever you're doing, draws and construction stuff, you're going to be paying for work that's done. Because the worst thing I hear is I get calls every once in a while. I had a contractor, this isn't me, but a contractor stole $20,000 of my money. And I'm like, how did they get $20,000 in your money? Oh, well, they wanted 20,000 to start. I'm like, well, that's not smart. They're like, the money, if you're doing a DSCR loan, the money that's at risk is the deposit. Lender will not pay for the deposit. Your money is the deposit. So you want to have that as low as possible and pay for work that's completed. Even if it means doing more draws, more inspections, more costs that way, factor it into your numbers, right? The other thing is contracts. Right? If somebody doesn't do what they say they're going to do, or does something really badly, you want to be able to have recourse. So it's about collecting the correct documents before you start and having an actual contract. If you don't do that correctly, it gets to the end, someone screwed you over, they didn't do what they were going to do, and for whatever reason, there's been some mistakes, you don't have recourse because you can't do a civil suit because you can't put a lien on their license because you don't have the license. You just didn't collect the right stuff. Attorney, the first thing they'll ask you is, can I get the copy of the contract? If you don't have a contract, it's doing this all correctly right from the start. And what I like when I sit down with a contractor right off the start, I have a 13-page document of a contract, and I send it over to them, and then I say, let's do a call, review the contract, let's do a call. They sign the contract and it comes back to me. That's a huge red flag. Nobody should ever sign my contracts. What contract is so one-sided to me that what the point of the contract is to start a conversation. If it, hey, there's penalties for being late. There's bonuses for being early. There's all kinds of clauses in there, and it's going to tell me that the timeline isn't accurate. They can't hit these times. Like they're going to tell you where the problems is. They're going to detail how the construction draws are going to work. It's going to detail the whole process, exactly how it's going to go, and what the point of the call is they're going to tell you which clauses they don't like, which is going to tell you the weaknesses in the project before you start. So you want to make things predictable, let them tell you where the problems are going to be beforehand. And the hard part is, if you just ask them to tell you that, they're going to say everything is going to be perfect because they don't want you to hire somebody else. Right?
Everybody loves us and everything works out perfectly. And, you just don't even have to worry about that. Glenn, I'm so glad that you shared that, because I call them contractors. They literally have con built into their name,
Yeah.
and they have tractor built in their name too. So they con you and then they tractor over you after they're done. So you have to know that that's part of the DNA of who you're working with. And definitely, I love your approach that, yeah, we have similar in our contract where we require them to, we bonus them up if they finish early, but we penalize them if they're late.
It
And
often works on the first time with a contractor, but afterwards they can just, okay, we're gonna, even though it's a 3-month project, we're gonna save 5 months so we can get a ton of bonuses. It sometimes doesn't work after a little, after one or two. They know it's coming.
that's beautiful, man. I love that you got a great approach there. So being able to find the properties long distance, being able to navigate that. Now you mentioned something about property management as well. So you're hiring property managers in the areas that you're purchasing properties, correct?
Of course, yeah. I think you can possibly pull this off if you're doing Airbnb because you're gonna be hiring out like little pieces and stuff. It's something that I honestly started with right when I started doing the US. When I was in Canada doing my rentals in Canada, there were, 20 minutes from my house and I would, be take vacation and go work on my own properties. That's ridiculous. That's not the point of this.
Yes.
But I didn't know any better back then. And it wasn't a business back then. But now that it's a business, property management is, I believe in property management and you it's I made a mistake when I went to Missouri, and I had some properties in Kansas City, and I had
Mm,
property management that I got some bills that I was like, "There's no way, there's no way." And then I happened to be in Kansas City when they sent me the bill, and I'm like, I didn't tell them I was coming. And anyway, I was there, and I was looking at some other properties, and then they were just like, "Oh yeah, here's the bills," and I'm like, "Tell the tenant I'm going to come over and take a walk of the house tomorrow," and they're like, "What?" And I walked it, but it turned out they were all legit. The
wow.
repairs were actually legit, but I did make friends with the tenant because that's what I do. I talk and chat and I make friends with whoever I talk to. And what's lovely about having a property management, when there is those issues, they call the property management until they get your contact information and they start contacting you. And it turns into there's a reason you have that property management there so that you can spend your time with scaling and raising money and building relationships and the stuff that is needed. And the stuff, once you have the properties and you're just maintaining it, you can hand that off to somebody else. You could do this, you can set this up. We're working on buying a building in Columbus, Ohio right now that we're planning on doing a full AI building on.
Mm,
So they're going to collect rent, they're going to call inspectors, the whole thing. We're working on it. It's not fully going yet on a 20 unit, but there's ways you could sub this out to VAs and maybe do it cheaper in house. But in all honesty, you leverage all of their experience on the area, the properties. Maybe they have, if they're doing this correctly, they have a handyman that works at a much cheaper rate than a plumber or an electrician. You're going to leverage their relationships with all these other contractors and ideally get, it's not always the case. That's why I keep saying ideally or whatever. Ideally, you're going to leverage them in order to try to make this property perform.
well, Glenn, I love what you've shared with us today and definitely inspiring on what's possible on investing long distance, and definitely like to continue to connect with you. Now, Glenn, how can people find you?
GlenSutherland.com is my website. At Canadian Investing in the USA.com is my, honestly though, come listen to the podcast. It's free. There's tons of content. I get other people that are investing in the US. I'll have to get Lou to come on the podcast and talk about his products. So we'll have to put an episode out with Lou. But like, it's free. It's out there. I'm not trying to be salesy. If you want to book a call, I'll answer some questions. It's all about giving, and that's how everything grows. If you try to hold it, like I said at the start, it is not going to work. So I'd rather you ask me a question before you make a mistake than try to get me to fix your mistakes afterwards.
Awesome. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for your wisdom, your knowledge, your experience. I know you've been a great inspiration for everybody, and we are looking forward to seeing you again real soon. Yeah, baby. Thanks for tuning in to the whole enchilada of real estate investing. I hope you're feeling ready to take your investing game to the next level. If you're serious about building wealth, you won't want to miss the Millionaire Jumpstart. It's a 3-day live event that's perfect for any level of investor. Whether you're just getting started or you're looking to scale, this can be one of the final steps of making real wealth happen. So, what are you waiting for? Enroll now at millionairejumpstart.com and get ready to make big moves in your real estate journey. I'm Lou Brown. Until next time, keep hustling, and remember, it's not about how much you make, it's about how smart you play the game.